Hi, this is Cross the Christian Cyclist, and I'm bringing to you another video answering the questions about cycling in Bali. We're going to cover 8 things you need to know, and the first one is safety precautions. The first thing I'll tell you is traveling into Bali, you want to make sure you have paperwork on your bike. If you're bringing in a bike like I brought in, my traveling bike is an S5 Cervelo. This is not a common bike in Bali, so I got stopped by customs because they were unfamiliar with the bike bag and they wanted to see, and they made me show the value of the bike. Well, I didn't have any paperwork on me buying the bike, so I had to go on the website and show them the bike and what the general cost of the bike is. The main thing is they let me through, but they just want to make sure you're not trying to come to Bali and sell items because it's illegal. The other thing you want to do is obviously make sure you have all your safety, your helmet. It's important. And I'll talk more about the road conditions in Bali, but you really want to make sure that you got your personal safety protection equipment with you. Bali is not a place where you want to try to bend the rules or get around skating. There's no bike lane, so you want to be very safe in Bali. And I'll talk more about visibility. But the main thing, one of the main things is Bali is 100% during tropical season, 100% humidity. You have 100% humidity and it's very hot. So you want to stay very hydrated and protected from the sun. So wear the appropriate clothing, your sunscreen, your sunglasses, all those things that'll help you have a more enjoyable ride. Because if you're not hydrated, you don't have sunscreen, you may find yourself getting sunburned or dehydrated, and there's a lot of things come from that. The other thing is, I start my rides out normally 30 minutes before the sun comes up. Now, obviously that brings its own dangers, but the main thing is make sure you have lights front and back. Now, this blinking red light is my camera light because I have a front camera, and then also I have my actual headlight, and then I have my rear lights as well. So it's important to make sure that you have proper lighting when you're on those roads, because again, these roads are not for novice or beginner cyclists. Let me say that again. They do offer cycling tours in Bali. If you are a beginner cyclist, you want to do the cycling tours. You do not want to do open road cycling in Bali because it's very dangerous, and you need to be experienced because you need to know how to handle your bike. And you also need to, not be one that get rattled or afraid easily. So I would tell you to stay away from the open road if you're not an experienced cyclist. The other thing is try to avoid peak traffic hours, which is during rush hour in the morning. And I'll tell you, their rush hour, if you're from the States, is different. Maybe you live in New York, you may be used to a lot of traffic. It gets very congested. And those cars, you're riding right along with those cars and those mopeds. So you need to be careful. And I'll talk about the infrastructure, the streets, but here, coming out of my villa, just to give you some example, this is considered a street in Bali. In the States, here I live in the Illinois area, this would be an alley, what we would call an alley, not a street. They call this a street. And I will talk about dogs a little later, as you see 2 of them out here. These are my friends, actually. They just letting me know, hey, we're here, go have a safe ride. But we'll talk about dogs, Bali dogs, because that's a big thing in Bali. And here's something that happened to me that you want to make sure that it don't happen to you. And that is, always check and make sure you have your inner tubes with you. I caught a flat and I had to walk home. So, guys, listen. Just be safe on the road, use common sense, and then make sure you check Indonesia laws for where you are. And I'll tell you, when I caught the flat, they do have rideshare service, Gojek and Grab, but we were in the Lavina area, which is North Indonesia, North Bali, and Gojek and Grab does not come that far. So I had to walk back to the villa. Okay, number 2. Bali Traffic. As I said before, there's no shoulders, there's no bike lanes. We're in the northern part of Bali, which is the Lavina area. One of the things you're going to see a lot in, I believe in Asia, period, especially Eastern Asia, is mopeds. There are a ton of mopeds on the road because the roads are small. The infrastructure is not the same as it is in the United States. You rarely see 4-lane roads, 5-lane roads, 6-lane roads. In fact, there's no highways in Bali. So the major roads, which this is a main artery that runs through the Lavina area along the northern coastline of the Bali Sea, which is a very beautiful place, a very beautiful country. And for a road cyclist, this is a beautiful place. And I'll tell you, with the mopeds, it become a little less intimidating because if you look at the mopeds like a road cyclist would look at bikes, basically you just have a bunch of e-bikes on the road riding that's able to pick up speeds of 30. Most of these guys ride anywhere between 25 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour. Occasionally you'll see a moped pass you up maybe at 40, and that's going really fast. So I can keep a pace of anything between 20 to 22 comfortably on flat, and here in Bali there's no wind, so you don't have the same thing we have in the Illinois area where it's very windy. So we deal with different conditions that would slow you down, but in a tropical climate where there's no wind and it's a flat road, and let me correct that when I say flat, because Bali is nowhere near flat, and I'll talk about that. But this particular stretch along Lavina, through the Lavina area, it's very flat, and that's why I take this. This is my training route, about 20 miles. I don't have to pick up a lot of elevation, and you can see all the mopeds. And basically, you just need to have the confidence and carve out your space, and you have to know how to hold your space, because as you can see, the city is waking up now. I started very early before the sun come up. We're going through a market area, and you can just see all the mopeds. You just have to carve out your space, and as you see, I'm flowing with traffic. It's not intimidating if you're an experienced cyclist, but if you are a beginner cyclist, this could be very intimidating for you, very scary, because you do have a lot of moving parts. But I can tell you right now, it is an absolutely beautiful country, and I can't wait till we get back again. Okay, so let's tackle a question someone sent to me. How does the terrain vary across different cycling routes in Bali, and which ones are suitable for different skill levels? Okay, so first off, let me just point out that I'm using my rear view camera because we're in the mountains now, and I thought it would be better, even though this film is not as stable as I would like it to be. I'm not using my traditional road bike. I'm using a travel bike, a Cervelo that I take with me when I travel, and it was a little difficult mounting the rear camera on the back and stabilizing it, but it gave the best depth perception so that you can get a real good understanding of what it's like climbing through the mountains of Bali. First, so let's talk about the different terrains and what they're suitable for. So we covered the terrain of the open road, okay? I showed you that in the last video, and basically you need to be an experienced cyclist. Then we talked, and we didn't talk, but I suggested that Bali do offer bike tours, okay? And on these bike tours, they take you on the safer routes, and those are for anyone, novice, experienced. You're just out looking for a good time. You don't have to worry about getting lost. They're going to take you to the most scenic spots to see the most common tourist attractions, okay? And then there's the off the beating path like this one. Okay, this particular route that I'm doing, I'm going through the mountains of Bali, and as I told you before, if you turn off the main road, it's gonna throw you onto a small street like this, which is a two-way street, even though it should only be a one-way, with traffic, trucks, cars, bikes, everything, mopeds going up and down this one small street. And these roads, the gradient on these roads vary. They can get upwards in the high 20s. I'm talking 25, 26, 27, 28%. In fact, there was a time that I was climbing. If you can look right now as I'm climbing up, you can see The gradient, okay, there was a time where I was climbing up one particular section and the front end of my bike lifted off the ground. Now, I don't have to tell you how afraid I became. I am an experienced cyclist. I have years of cycling behind me, and I love climbing. Okay, that's my thing. I like climbing. I'm on a road bike, and that gradient was so steep, it literally lifted the front end of my bike up as I was trying to pedal up it. And so I had to switch my climbing technique, which I rarely climb in a zigzag, or they call them figure eights or zigzagging. But I had to zigzag in this particular case because that was the only way I could keep my front end down. Because if I tried to go straight up like I usually do, I was afraid the front end was gonna come off the ground again. Now, let me explain something to you guys about why you need to be seriously experienced riding through these mountains. You can see the sign right there showing the gradient and the depthness of the gradient. One of the things that you have to be cautious of in this particular case, when the front end of my bike lifted off the ground. Now imagine this. If the front end of your bike lift off, or for any reason you're on gradient this steep, as you see the mopeds and the cars going by me, you can see the slope downward. If you have to put your feet on the ground, remember, you're wearing cleats. So to get off your bike on gradient that steep is surely going to turn into an ice rink. You are going to slide straight down the mountain. There is no traction. There's nothing on your shoes to help you get the grip you need in order to stop the slide when you're on gradient this steep. So this is one of the main reasons why I said this is not just for if you're an experienced cyclist, but you generally ride in flat land. You may not want to ride off the beaten path of Bali through the mountains because you don't have experience riding through the mountains, and it takes skill, not just going up. It takes skill, bike handling skills coming down, because every time you release your brakes, you're flying down this mountain. I mean, you can go from 0 to 26, 27, 30 miles an hour in a matter of seconds. So it takes some experience. Now, for the most part, those are the three different terrains. You have the tourist terrain, where they take you on bike paths near the city areas. Then you have the open road, which is open to any cyclist anywhere, everywhere. And then you have the mountain terrain, where you need to be a skilled climber. You need to be a skilled bike rider, because as you can see in various clips, you're climbing all the time. It's a climbing mecca. I absolutely love not just the climb. If you look at the landscaping, it is so beautiful. You're surrounded by palm trees and all type of different trees and vegetation, and I tell you, the scenery, the mountain, the skylines, and the old temples, and just the people and the culture that's in the mountains is so different. It's one thing to be down in the open area on open roads in the city but there's another thing when you get in the mountains. I tell you, I went through so many villages. They were so beautiful. The people, and here's another question that someone asked me. What should cyclists expect from road etiquette in Bali? And my answer to that is people are super friendly. Okay, you just have to understand their traffic flow. If you understand the flow of traffic, the road etiquette is just fine. It's when you don't understand the traffic flow, you disrupt the traffic flow, you will find people get irritated with you. Even on a bicycle, I was able to ride in the midst of traffic. And just like with these mountains, you got to know these guys are coming around. They live in these mountains. So they're coming around these mountains flying. Okay. And not just mopeds, trucks, cars, mopeds. So it can get pretty sketchy and very scary at times because you're not on this path by yourself and you're climbing at 4 miles an hour. You're descending at 35, 48 between 35 up to 50 miles an hour, descending, if not more, depending on your bike. I can tell you right now, I never allowed my bike to just completely descend wide open. I went through some breaks there. Some of these slopes was just unbelievably steep. In fact, it was more fun going up than it was coming down. Most people enjoy coming down the mountain. It was just the opposite for me. I enjoyed going up. Coming down was a whole different scary type of scenario. One of the main reasons for that, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about these dogs too. One of the main reasons for that is the infrastructure. They don't have like really smooth roads. There's a lot of potholes in these roads. So when you're climbing slow. You have time to see it, you can get around it. But when you're descending at 48 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, and you don't see that pothole and you hit that pothole, that could be the end of the day for you. So I was very cautious of all the potholes and, the various road infractions that could cause me to have a problem. Here's another question. What types of bike are most suitable for cycling in Bali? And are there any gear or equipment recommendations for cyclists? Okay, so as I told you before, I'm riding a Cervelo with a Shimano gear setup. On this particular bike, I had a 5236 crank on the front with a 32 cassette on the back. No, a 34 cassette on the back. 1134 on the back. And I can tell you that I would have preferred to have a compact, a 5034 on the front, and versus my 5236. I was fine with the cassette. I worked a little harder than I needed to be with such a big cassette. And then my tires on this bike, which was really a problem for me because they're 23s, because the Cervelo S5, this particular model, the clearance for the tires are really thin. So I had to put a thin 23 on the back and I got a 25 in the front. But I got to tell you, you should not ride in Bali with anything less than 28 millimeters. I can tell you right now, 28 millimeters should be the smallest tire you should have, because again, the roads are really, they're not the best of roads. So that's my recommendation as far as equipment go. 28 millimeters and up, mountain bike preferably. I brought a road bike, but honestly, a mountain bike, cyclocross bike, gravel bike, any of those bikes would have been probably better suited for these roads than just your pure road bike. With even though a lot of the road bikes now they're making with 28 millimeter tires would have been fine. My road bike that I keep home have 28 millimeters. I would have been fine with that, but I couldn't fit it in my travel luggage. The last thing I'm gonna discuss is dogs. Bali has a lot of dogs, okay, and you have to be aware of the dogs because they will run out on you, okay, and if you're not if you're scared of dogs, if you have a fear of dogs, that could change your entire ride, because there's dogs everywhere, especially in the mountains. They don't have fences. The neighbors are not, they're not watching each other dogs. The dogs come out of their properties. They run up and down the road. They know where they live. They go back home when it's time to eat. But you will encounter a lot of dogs, and they will run up on you barking. Not violently or viciously, but they will run up on you barking. And again, like my wife has a unbelievable fear of dogs, so that would really change her whole entire ride. In fact, it would become more of a dangerous ride because she would be too concerned about the dogs around her versus looking at the road, and that can be a distraction, and the distraction could cause a problem. So if you have an issue with dogs, you may have a problem in Bali. Bali has a great deal of dogs, but I can tell you, I've encountered tons of dogs, and not one of them posed a threat to me. Okay, not one made me feel threatened. In fact, I was more concerned about this road than I was about the dogs on the road. So that's it for me. Listen, I hope you enjoyed this, and I gotta tell you, if you're an experienced cyclist and you're looking for a very beautiful country with beautiful scenery, unbelievable scenery, I suggest you go to Bali and enjoy cycling in Bali, Indonesia. It is truly a remarkable place. As I said before, I can't wait till we get back. Hey, this is your boy Cross the Christian Cyclist, and I'll talk to you again.